How do you celebrate freedom? For millions of enslaved people, especially here in North Carolina, that will look different for everyone. That included finding family, possibly relocating to other areas to find work, or to just simply take their rest. Here at Stagville Plantation in Durham, the stories of enslaved people are carried through storytelling and connecting people to their ancestors that were enslaved here on the Benahan property. In part one of our interview, you got to hear a little from my friend and colleague Khadija Brandon about how women have shaped her career and her work. With the second part of our conversation, we talked a little bit more about how to give agency to the enslaved people here at Stagville and how doing the work to amplify their stories and etch their experiences into historical memory have not only shaped her work, but how she shows up in the world. Although Khadija has recently moved on to a different position, still amplifying backstories here in North Carolina, I highly encourage you all to come by Stagville and to join them on their 18th annual Juneteenth celebration and learn a little bit more about what makes this such a special and unique place. So, without further ado, please enjoy part two of my interview with Khadija Brandon.
My name is Khadija McNair, and I am the Assistant Site Manager at Stagville State Historic Site. We are a site with a pretty small staff, so I do a lot of different things. Of course, I lead tours here, I interpret at this site, I do a lot of research, and particularly genealogy research. We plan and execute events here. We lead school trips. There's field trips out here. A lot of different things. So I studied history in college, and I did a bachelor's and master's in history. And I knew right away that I did not want to be in a classroom. Like, I knew teaching was probably not my calling. So I was very interested in historic sites and getting more experience out in public history. So Stagville was actually the first place I ever came to that was a public history site. And I was a volunteer here in 2016. And it was amazing, and it kind of opened my eyes to what folks are doing out in the field. And I was here for about 6 months at that time, and I also spent time at Duke Homestead State Historic Site, which is also a historic site in Durham, and I spent some time at the Charlotte Hawkins Brown Museum and Paul Memorial Institute Historic Site, which was amazing, and like another Black history site in North Carolina that a lot more folks should know about. And so being at those sites, of course, definitely informed my work, and it brought me back here to Stagville. And when they had a full-time position open, I was make sure I applied. So I think the kind of the biggest thing that, or the thing that drives all of our work here at Stagville is our mission. So we are a site that's dedicated to understanding the stories of enslaved people who were here and sharing the stories of enslaved people. We know this was one of the largest plantations in North Carolina, over 900 people enslaved here at one time. So every tour, event, program that folks come to here will center that history. So, of course, every tour that I give will tell different stories about enslaved people. There were so many people here, so many different experiences. So I do give kind of a tour that tries to highlight exactly different narratives, different people's experiences who were enslaved here. We also do events throughout the year. So there are John Canoe is coming up in December, which is a West African and Caribbean tradition that took place here during slavery, and we partner with the African American School to it's a music and dance performance that the children perform. We also do Juneteenth here every year. Juneteenth is also an event that we also do Descendants Day along with. So we do a Juneteenth public event, and then usually in the evening or around the same time, we'll have an event solely for descendants. So A large part of our work here at Stagville is also working with descendant communities. So there are many people who can trace their ancestry back to this land, and we make sure to always make sure we're in relationship with those folks and not allow them, but make sure we're making the space open for folks to be here who have that tie to this place, because this is their history, and this literal land is theirs. The sensitivity and the honor we should have around the history of slavery. So that could be something as literal as using the words enslaved people versus saying slave, but also speaking power into those who may not have resisted by escaping slavery, but resisted by surviving slavery. So I think personally that's kind of been one of the most dramatic changes for me in how I understand this history and also share this history. Just being very sure that, particularly speaking about the history of slavery, but any history that I understand or know, making sure that I'm sharing that history and understanding it in a way that speaks power into all people, because people have been oppressed and discriminated against everywhere, and we have to make sure that history is centering and focusing on all the narratives and the true narrative. Of course, we look at the primary sources, the documents that exist, and try to understand all that we can about people's experiences. And like, for example, here at Stagville, we do have some words from formerly enslaved people here, but of course a large part of what we know about this site comes from the records of the enslavers, of the Benahan and Cameron family, and what they're writing about enslaved people. And of course they're not writing from a perspective that speaks power into enslaved people. So we have to make sure that when we're looking at those records and those documents, we're kind of reading them with a fine-tooth comb and kind of gathering as much as we can about the trueness of people's experiences here. The question is complicated because this history is so emotional, and I think one thing that I've learned here, and I will also preface that by saying that all history is emotional. Every story that we hear from the past, we should feel some kind of way about it. But the history of slavery is definitely a emotional history, and of course, I think because American slavery impacted African Americans so much, it is complicated how folks interact with this site. And also we could talk about the history of plantation sites in general in the South and the damages that have been done by sites not acknowledging the history of slavery. So I would say that what I can do in my role to make folks, or to try to make this space welcoming to people, is to be welcoming, to make myself available, to make sure I'm sharing the honest history, as I've said before. And there are people who come here and who feel sad, and like, that's valid. People who come here and feel angry, that's valid. People who don't want to come here, and that is also valid. So I think just as a staff person at this site, just trying to make sure I'm holding space for all of those emotions as much as I can, and making sure that people know that that's something that our staff is kind of committed to, is making sure that people do feel welcome on this site, and people can hear stories that they can understand that we are heavily researching, and we know it's interesting because I think anybody, like, I don't want to say like black people or white people, anybody, people can come here, and as the tour guide, as the interpreter, I can like see in the body language like the distrust. People are like, oh, I don't know if I'm getting, or they're telling me exactly, and by the end of the tour, folks are like, okay, this was good, you know,
Mm-hmm.
or oh, I feel like I got, you know, I heard stories that I didn't expect to hear, and so that's always a really rewarding experience when people kind of go on that journey with us. But also recognizing as the tour guide that like people don't have to go on that journey, you know, like as much as I want to like get people here and like I'm so excited about Stagville, what we do, also recognizing that like people have to interact with this history because it is so emotional. People have to interact with it at their own capacity. I think there's some challenges I've overcome, and there's some challenges I'm still like I deal with daily. You know, I think kind of one of the most personal challenges is the emotion in this work. I think that is kind of a daily challenge to make sure I'm present in what I'm doing, and I know that I am because I'm very passionate about my work. But also making sure that I'm able to share it. There are times in tours where I tear up. I actually almost cried yesterday on a tour. And like just because it's impactful, right? And like and like the people on my tour yesterday were very receptive and lovely folks. But you know, I'm impacted by it too. So I think that is the challenge. Not that I want to be impacted by it because these are stories that matter. But also understanding that like I'm at work, I gotta be professional, you know. Kind of what makes me the most emotional and like what I was speaking to yesterday with this group is that just how grateful I am to do this work, and like particularly here at Stagville and knowing the story of this place. I'm really grateful to be able to tell the stories of enslaved people, and and knowing that that's part of my history and part of my ancestry, and being able to do this today is really, really powerful. So that makes kind of the challenge of having emotions can be hard. That is a challenge, and I think kind of reflecting what I was saying a little bit earlier in people's capacity for like digesting this history. When I have visitors who may be not as receptive to what I'm telling them, or distrusting, and like vocal about it, at a certain point, it's not on me to like convince them, you know. And I do want people to come here and have an impactful experience. I want them to understand the history, understand the importance of this place. But my work can only go so far, I guess, with folks who don't want to understand. And that is challenging. And I think the personal challenge in that for me is, you know, I really value this work. I really value what I do. So the challenge is removing myself from that, to, you know, not want to like get this and understanding it's a personal journey, right? Like speaking about the growth that I've had in doing this work, like we all have to grow. So that can be a challenge, but also just recognizing that, you know, I can share what I can share with them, but I'm not going to debate with anyone, or, you know, let them know where the sources are. You know, I can tell them like go look in the archives, but that's all I can do.
Right.
That work in itself is one of the most rewarding parts of my job. Being able to do genealogy, and particularly for Black folks, and showing them records that show their ancestors is really rewarding. And in the same vein, it's also really challenging because we know slavery as a system was extremely violent, extremely traumatic, and very sad. And So I think it's beautiful and impactful to like share with people names they never knew before, and to hear from them how amazing it is to be in touch with these ancestors. But it's also just as sad to say like, well, this is all we know, or this is as far as we were able to get back, or we lose track of this person at this point, or like we're not able to complete it most of the time. Like all the time we only get back so far. But it's rewarding because it's something they didn't know before, and it's really, really, I don't know, I won't say it's really, really cool, but like, it's just like, it means a lot. Yeah, it means a lot to me. And I will say, the research part of it, I do really enjoy, like looking at the primary documents, but also building relationships with people, because I think it's very personal. This is people's family, like this work can be extremely personal. And so, I've met people through doing this work, and kind of they will call on me for, this, or I saw this thing, can you research that for me, or can you scan this and send me back some pictures, or, or we have events here, we're inviting descendants to events, and just kind of building those relationships and continuing to see people, seeing their families, is also really amazing and I think really fun. A descendant who I did research for, and finding their ancestors, and I found them and in the records of enslaved people here, and I found that some of his ancestors were a part of a Christmas gift. So I had to share with this person over the phone that their ancestors were given as a gift, and that was really hard, and I was really impacted by that, and I'm sure they were too, and it's like, I guess, I couldn't hide that from them. I couldn't make it softer or better. Yeah. It had to be what it was, and so I was able to share that with that person, and there was silence on the phone, and they were grateful, and that was one of the more like that story really stood out to me, or it's really, I've sat with that for a while because. Yeah, it can be hard and challenging, and I think people often ask me like, how can you do this kind of work? And I will tell them like, self-care is really important. Well, I think with all work, we all need to take care of ourselves, but like that was one of those days where it was like, okay, like take a deep breath and drink some water, like have a moment, because it can be really hard. It's also hard because, like, of course, as a person who has done this work and like doing the genealogy research and understanding what the terms mean on this paper from 1820, when I'm describing it to descendants who may not have the same training as I do, like I'm always okay, well, this is a tax list, and this is what this means, and this shows this, and these numbers mean this, so I'm always doing that for people. I think that one was just hard because a Christmas gift, like that part of it, but like it's all traumatic, but like and I'm thinking now like, okay, it's all terrible, but like Christmas gift, and then also to say to someone like, this is your ancestor on a tax list, like it's hard. It's so hard. Yeah, it's just difficult to sit with. There are some people that I can pick out, but Stagville, all these people like built the city around. I mean, you know, like this was the largest plantation in North Carolina, likely, and we know like the city of Durham, like Durham was not very much in existence when slavery ended. So these people like literally built the cities around us. They were the working class after emancipation. And so folks will go on to do so many different things. And I will also say that like so many people were enslaved here. We might not even, you know, half these people might be somewhere doing things that we haven't found out yet. Mm-hmm. So I will also say like descendants are still there that we might not know about yet, or they might not know us, or, you know, vice versa. Mm-hmm. But some of the like stories I can pick out of people who might be a little bit more notable, definitely Mary Walker. So she was enslaved here, and she was one of few people to have escaped this place. She took her freedom from the Cameron plantations in the 1840s. There's a whole book on her life, so it's called To Free a Family by Sidney Nathans. And yeah, she was forced to Philadelphia with the Camerons. They took her to Philadelphia multiple times, and she took her freedom by hiding in Philadelphia after being in Philadelphia so many times with this family. Mary Walker was enslaved in the homes of the Camerons. Her family had been here for had been enslaved here for generations. Her mother and grandmother and great-grandmother were enslaved here. And she had 3 children before she escaped slavery. 4 children before she escaped slavery. And only 3 of them survived to adulthood. And after she escaped, she tried to see her children again. She tried to figure out ways to get back in touch with them. And she tried to buy her children, and that did not work out. She tried to have someone come here and just like take her kids and bring them to her, and that didn't work out. And it wasn't until after the Civil War in 1865 that she was reunited with 2 of her kids, and that took about 17 years before she saw them again. But there's a whole book on her life, and we know that Addie Walker, the American Girl doll, that story is fictional, but it's loosely based on Mary Walker's life. Parts of Mary Walker's story and parts of things that happened here at Stagville. So there's Mary Walker. I'll also point out Reverend Morgan Latta. He was enslaved here. He's one of the few people who was enslaved in this site to ever write their life story. You can find it online. And he would, he was maybe 10 years old or so when slavery ended. And he would end up going to Shaw University, and he established a school in Raleigh for African American children called Latta University. And yes, very amazing guy. But so many more stories, so many more people, and like the descendants are still moving and thriving and doing great things today. So say more stories to come in the future. I will say, I mean, it's great. Stagville's a great place for a dissertation. If any PhD students out there want to write anything, so many different things. But like there are some great books on the Black history of Durham, and so many like communities of people who have roots that trace back to Stagville in Durham, and so lots of what we can, Black Wall Street and all these spaces that are around us. We know that folks from here had ties to all of that. So the word that comes to my mind is just like growth. Like I feel like in doing this work and interacting with the public and understanding history, understanding individual stories, it's given me more of a passion for this work. Of course, I was already passionate about it when I started, but it's like just out of college and like wanted to be in the field, and like now I feel more driven by like the, I want to say like by the people, but like the people of the past and the people of the present. You know, like I'm driven by like understanding exactly what happened to people, exactly their stories, and sharing those with more people. I think the history here, or history in general, is so impactful and so important, especially for understanding where we are and what the spaces around us, why the spaces around us exist. And I think Stagville is one of those places where it can give a lot of context for like what is happening in the spaces around us, like going back to Black Wall Street in Durham, and Hayti in Durham, and communities in Orange County, and Black communities in Orange County. Like a lot of these spaces are really impacted by the stories here. So I think just more of that drive. I've been changed by developing more of that drive and motivation to continue to do this work. If that's clear. I don't know. Stagville is a site that centers the history of enslaved people. I think there are very few places in America that do that. There are some great places out there, other plantation sites that are doing similar work, and Stagville is a part of that group. And so I think we are important because we are sharing those narratives with the public. It is we are mission based in that way. Stagville is also significant in that I think our location is really important. I think being in an area where there's so much growth around us, being in an area between so many universities and colleges, there's so many people here, and I think that Stagville is important and needed because we can give a lot of that historical context for the cities that exist around us, for the people who are new or for the people who have been here forever who just don't know. But I think we're a really important site, and this site, like I said a million times before, like history is emotional. This can be a site that can be transformative. That's the word. It can be transformative, and I think that people should come here and experience the stories we have to tell here, experience the land, the buildings, and hopefully have a transformative experience in whatever that transformation can be. Yeah, I think Stagville is a great place. It's an amazing place, and unfortunately, we hear this story all the time, and I had the same experience of people saying, like, I grew up in Durham and I never knew about Stagville. I never knew about this place. And yeah, I think I had that experience. I'm born and raised here in Durham. Never knew about Stagville. I literally grew up 10 minutes from Stagville. Never knew about Stagville. But coming here and being on this land and learning the stories, I'm just so impacted by it, and it's important. I don't know how else to describe it, but it's important that folks come here and experience Stagville, and many different ways to experience the site. So I can speak for like Stagville. I don't know if I can speak to like descendants, because that is growing and changing and growing. I would say, like, of course, what I would like to see for Stagville in the future is, of course, more awareness. I think people are a lot more aware about this site than they were. I think we, always seeing more folks here. But I hope in 20, 30 years that more people come to Stagville, more people know about Stagville. And think that the work we're doing now is really great, and I hope we continue to grow in the direction that we're going in, and I would just hope that whatever, I don't know what that growth looks like, you know? So, and of course I want this place to exist forever and ever, and I want these stories to be shared forever and ever, and I think the stories that we share right now are really great. I think I will say one of our kind of continuing goals is to continue to research and continue to share different stories. So like we know a lot about people who were enslaved here. We're able to share many different stories, share many different names of folks. So I hope in 20 years that we have even more stories to tell, even more people to talk about, and the primary sources and all the stuff to like learn more about folks. That's something I really hope to see in the future, which I believe we will see because we're doing that right now. But yeah, I just want Stagville to continue to flourish and be a space for descendants, but also for community, also for students. I think Stagville is amazing, and all people should be here. All people should hear the stories and experience this place. So I just hope that grows in the future. So come visit us at Stagville State Historic Site. We are located in Durham, North Carolina. You can find us at online. If you Google Stagville State Historic Site, we do have a website. And also we're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And we have tours every day we're open, Tuesday through Saturday, 9 to 5. We do have a tour schedule, so just give us a call to confirm the tour schedule. You can call us at 919-620-0120.